Hey, what's up? This is Kev from the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast, and you're listening to the BS Podcast Network. Enjoy the show.
In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cutillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Remember when you ran away and I got on my knees and begged you not to leave because I'd go berserk? Well, you left me anyhow, and then the days got worse and worse, and now you see I've gone completely out of my mind. And they're coming to take me away, ha-ha, they're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha, to the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time, and I'll be happy to see those nice young men in their clean white coats, and they're coming to take me away, ha-ha! You thought it was
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today is Thursday, August 17th, and this is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Cutillo, and I have with me Mr. Sal Lito. What's going on, Sal?
Man, I wasn't sure if you were going to talk to me first. What is your process behind who you decide to introduce first on a daily basis?
I really don't like Steve today, so I decided to introduce you first. So
I actually almost thought that was coming. I could feel that.
Steve is really low on my list of people that I enjoy today. So you get top billing tonight, Sal.
Woo to the who.
I'll tell you what. I feel like I've earned it, and I feel pretty good about that.
You have definitely earned it. Our pre-show meeting was somewhat contentious. It has not gone well. Hopefully we can get past it and have a great show, though. I'm looking forward to this. We do have a great guest tonight, Brian Jester of Occupy Fantasy. What was Occupy Fantasy? Did I screw that up already?
Yep.
Yep, sure didn't I?
Occupy Fantasy. No, that's right.
Oh, see? All right.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve, you just, it's going to be one of those nights.
Baby. I'm on a roll.
Steve Marcus is here screwing things up. So we'll have Brian Jester come on in a little bit. But first, I want to ask Sal, how are you doing, Sal? You look like you're having a pretty good week, actually. You're posting all these pictures of the beach and drinks, and
Sunrise.
It looks like a good time for you.
Yeah, well, until it got spoiled by a baseball practice, I had to come back to the mainland. But I was hanging out on Fire Island here on Long Island. Beautiful place. A friend had a house out there for the week. And yeah, I just got up and watched the sunrise this morning at about 5:30 this morning, which was pretty cool. And it's just, getting away, a little bit of time to rejuvenate.
Well, if anyone deserves it, it is not Steve. So I'm glad that you got some time away. And I'm sure your family was happy to not have you near them too. So that's good. You know what, Sal? I take that back. I'm sorry. I can't be fighting with both of you tonight. That's going to be rough.
No, you can. That'll be good.
Oh, it's good for ratings, I guess. Steve, what's going on with you? How are you? It's been a long time since we've talked.
It really has been. We don't talk at all when we're not on this podcast. So it has been a while, but it's Thursday night. Week 2 of the preseason is back in full force. I'm watching Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jacksonville Jaguars, a couple Florida teams. Just happy the football's back on. Just
little Fitz magic going on right now, huh?
Yeah, he's trying to bring it back. That beard is in full effect right now. It's great.
The beard is definitely in full effect. I'm happy to see him out there. It's good. It's definitely good to have football on. Bortles is bortling, Sal. So that's definitely happening. And
listen, the guy had a lot of passes dropped on him in the first half. 2 of them that would have been touchdowns.
Facts.
One of them by Allen Robinson.
He also blatantly underthrew Allen Robinson several times so far, which is strange.
Right, but there was one in a touchdown
Also
that hit
facts.
him in the end zone to hit him right in the bread basket.
It was the bread basket or the hands? Because I think we've had problems with that in this show before.
It was catchable.
All right, that's good. That's good. All right, so before we get, we're going to do a lot tonight. Like I said, we're going to Brian Jester on. We're going to go through some of the news that's going on this week over the last couple of days since we last talked to you. We will talk a little bit about play draft, obviously, and then we will get into some rankings discussion, as we mentioned and started to last week or earlier this week as well. But first, let's get to our guest. Are we going to welcome in our guest for tonight, Mr. Brian Jester? He is the co-founder of Occupy Fantasy. He used to write for Number Fire and Bleacher Report, and he is, of course, the author of The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Profitable DFS Player. How's it going, Brian?
Gentlemen, what's up? Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm doing great. What about you?
We're doing well. We're doing very well, actually.
Well, why are you speaking for me? He asked us how we're doing. You tell him. I don't know. Maybe I'm not doing well.
Sal, don't. Wow. Jeez, come on, man.
hey, Brian. I'm doing well, buddy. Thanks for asking.
Instantly feels uncomfortable.
He's always got to make it weird. He's always going to make it weird. Sorry about that, Brian. The rest of this will be better, I promise. Look, right. I got to tell you, though, the one thing about your book, and we'll get into it more in a little bit, the name needs work, man. It's long. It's hard to read.
I know, yeah. We just call it the Ultimate Guide. That's the easiest way to call it.
All right. That's good. So obviously, your book, The Ultimate Guide, is a DFS focused book on how to be profitable. But why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your background, how you got into fantasy, how you got into DFS, and of course, how you came to write this book.
Yeah, so I've been playing fantasy football for 19 years now. I started, back when I was a kid, I was looking at stats in the newspaper, and I used to keep my own stats and my own sporting events. I was all about stats. And then when I was introduced to fantasy football when I was, I think, 12 years old, and I was commissioner of my first league, I was hooked ever since. So been playing fantasy football for a while now. And, I've been writing about it for 10 years now. And then I have a poker background, sports betting background. So DFS was really just a natural transition for me.
Yeah, it's you find a lot of the poker guys transfer over to that, and I wish I had a better background and made more money doing that. But do you have a specific site? All of us, right, Steve? Do you have a specific site that you choose to play on, or you move around?
Yeah, I move around. It depends on the sport too, and I talk about this in the book. But there are so many factors that determine which site you should play on. It's really different for every person. So I play some on DraftKings, some on FanDuel. It depends. But it depends on your risk tolerance, what the scoring is for the sites, and how much time you have, if you can play on both, if you can only play on one. So, I play on both. I play on other sites as well, but it really comes down to your personal preference. Yeah,
a lot of people don't realize there are a couple of other small. So, Yahoo has a version now as well. Obviously, DraftKings and FanDuel are the two bigger names, but there's a lot of little smaller sites that you could probably make a little bit better money on. Do you want to divulge to us what's the most is that you've ever won in a contest?
I wish I had an interesting answer for you. I don't play a lot of GPPs. I mostly play some smaller contests, so it's not really impressive. I have a few 4-figure scores thanks to the satellite strategy that I outline in the Ultimate Guide. If you guys want a story, I was 1 out away from 40K last year thanks to a Chris Davis home run. So that's still a sore spot for me.
Oh, jeez, I would imagine.
That's tough.
Made Steve's yearly salary right there.
Hey, you mentioned. Wait, sorry to cut in here, Sal, but I got a question for you because you mentioned a couple of the other little sites. You want to tell us what those are because some of our listeners may not know. And then the other follow-up question to that is: do you ever get in on the draft app? We've been playing a lot of that lately, so I'm curious. I know it's a different format; it's not salary cap, it's draft. But I didn't know if you get into that at all.
Yeah, no, I haven't had a chance to play on it yet. It's on my list of things to do, but with the book and everything coming out and preparing for football, I haven't had a chance to really get on it, but from the things I've heard, it's been good. But I know a lot of people play on Yahoo or Boom Fantasy is a big one that's coming up now. I play on Real Time Sports. That's a smaller one they're a season-long platform, but they just got into DFS a few years ago. Like Sal said, there's tons of these smaller ones where you can really make money because there are a lot of season-long players that switch over to DFS, and it's not the same.
All right, so when you sent the book over to us about a week or so ago, I jumped right in. I read it right away, and I was like, you captured me right away. I've always wanted to be a better DFS player, like yourself. I've been playing for a long time. I started back in 1994. Redraft stuff like that, and I've had moderate success at DFS. But I'd be lying if I said I had a real strategy or a plan. I go in there each week, and I just I freelance. So. I'm definitely going to. I have some time coming up. I'm going to dig into this entire book, and hopefully, it teaches me how to, put a couple of bucks in my pocket. But why don't you give us a general overview of what the book is and what people should be expecting to get out of it?
Yeah, sure. So the book, it's 19 chapters long, and it's focused on the overlooked foundational pieces that are really required to be a profitable and successful DFS player. And these areas that the book focuses on is really, it's overlooked and it's uncovered in the DFS industry now. And namely, those items are bankroll management, contest selection, and bigger picture strategy. So I started Occupy Fantasy with this realization that all this information was missing in the industry. All the content you see now is, which players should you play? What are the best stacks, the best values, et cetera, et cetera. It's all the same. But no one really tells you how much of your bankroll you should allocate. No one tells you which types of contests you should play. And no one tells you how this particular slate fits into the bigger picture. And it really makes a lot of sense why so many people lose. And DraftKings, they publish a report every single month now. They have to be transparent with all the legal issues. But it shows every single month on the 15th, they publish this report, and every single month it shows that more than 80% of their users do not win money. And the big reason for that is their lack of experience in these areas that are covered in the Ultimate Guide. No one teaches you how to manage your money. No one tells you the right types of contests to play. I mean, you look at the lobby, and there are thousands of contests that you can play, but no one tells you, which lineups you should put in those contests and what the payouts are, and really how all of this fits into your own personal strategy. And so I decided to sit down, write the book, and really outline all these items to help lower that 80% figure.
Yeah, and that is absolutely what you did. Diving in a little bit deeper to that, something that I read right off the bat that I liked was your analogy that you used for risk tolerance. And talking about that, I write a betting article for falafelhouse.com, so I really liked this take that you had. Can you talk about risk tolerance and how somebody should go about taking that into account when they play DFS?
Yeah, so I'll tell a little story here. The analogy we use in the book is this flipping a coin game. And my girlfriend actually brought it to my attention. She's a teacher, and they had a guest speaker at their school come in and talk to the teachers. And the guest speaker asked, if we flipped a coin right now, if I walked up to you and said, let's flip a coin. If it's heads, I'll give you $200. If it's tails, you give me $100. And my girlfriend's telling me this, and she's like, what would you do? And I was like, oh, I'm taking that bet all day. Let's flip this coin as many times as you want. And she said her entire room said they wouldn't take the bet. They're like, no, why would I risk $100 on a coin flip? And it's really a state of mind, how you really think about risk and expected value. So just the coin flip example, if you think about it, every time you flip that coin, you have a positive expected value of $100. So you may not want to lose $100, but if this guy's going to come up and say, let's flip this coin as many times as you want, in the long run, you're going to earn about $100 in every flip. So, I like that example. It spoke to me, and depending on which side of the answer you are there, it can really tell a lot about your risk tolerance in DFS. So for me, I have a higher risk tolerance than most. That's in life and in DFS. So I'm okay with losing multiple days as long as I know the wins are bigger. I'll take a lot of small risk with high upside to help grow my bankroll substantially. So just in DFS talk, I play lots of multipliers and 100-man contests and things like that. So as opposed to steadily grinding out 50-50s and head-to-heads.
That's interesting. The coin flip thing's definitely interesting because you don't look at it from most people would look at it from a one-on-one situation. You're thinking, well, $100 on a coin flip, that ain't good. But yeah, over the long term, that's a great way to look at it. One of the things that I found to be most interesting in the book is obviously right in the beginning, and Sal mentioned it earlier, saying he didn't really have a plan. He just kind of goes into things, into his drafts, and kind of picks his lineup based on what he knows about fantasy football for the week and yada yada yada. And I think a lot of people do that, as you mentioned. So to me, the interesting part that you lead the book off with is the bankroll and how important it is to understand your bankroll, understand what your goals are, and what you want to do with your bankroll and how you want to maximize it. So I guess, talk a little bit about that section in the book and maybe tell us what the best advice you could give anyone that may be starting out as a DFS player or just hasn't been successful yet.
Yeah, for sure. And the biggest thing, and you see all these players, we all know we have friends who've played, family who's played, people in our fantasy leagues have played DFS, and they mostly just come back and say, yeah, I lost my deposit. And the biggest reason is they overspend their bankroll on a daily or weekly basis. If you lose 3 days in a row, it shouldn't deplete your entire account, but for many people it does. I mean, we had one follower, and I had to ask him a couple of questions, but this one follower on Twitter said he had to deposit 15 times in the last 4 months. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You need to stop doing this. And the biggest reason for this is people spend 15, 20% of their bankroll. You even see some industry sites recommend, yeah, you can play 15% of your bankroll tonight, but that's ludicrous. That's reckless. If I can give one of the biggest pieces of information from the book, if you're playing NFL, a weekly sport, you really shouldn't spend more than 8% of your bankroll on a weekly basis. And it may not seem like a lot if you think you have a $200 bankroll and you're like, oh man, I'm doing all this research and I'm only playing $16. It's like, why am I even doing this? But believe me, it adds up. You're playing every week. And if you play a daily sport, you're playing every day. It adds up. So don't spend more than your bankroll allows, no more than 8% of your bankroll on a weekly basis. And then also I'll add an extra tip here. Just look at your results. Most people have no idea what their return on investment is, how they fare in certain contests versus other contests. There are plenty of free apps out there and websites that allow you to track your data. So definitely just look at results and make a plan out of that.
Yeah, that's something that I think a lot of people, myself included, have never even thought to do, is track your results and see where you're doing well and where you're not and where you're winning and losing and all of that. That's an interesting fact that I think I'm going to take with me this year. Another thing that I was curious about from someone with as much experience as you, obviously there's a debate over whether to play GPPs, cash games, and what type of players you play in those contests. And I think most of us can kind of formulate a decent strategy on which players to play, but not exactly a strategy around which ones should I be playing. It sounds like you play mostly cash games or multipliers, as you mentioned. But is there a time to play GPPs and versus the cash games, or how do you formulate your plan for the week?
Yeah. And I'll start by saying it's to no fault of your own. This is a DFS industry standard. This cash game versus GPPs. You see it all the time. Here are your cash plays for the week. Here are your GPP plays for the week. And it's a cop out for industry providers, because if I say this is a cash game play, that means he's going to be popular. Everyone else is recommending this guy. So if he busts, everybody else said he's going to be good, so you can't blame us. And then if it's a GPP play, it's like, oh, this guy might not do well, but if he does, you could win some money. And then if he doesn't do well, they're like, oh, we told you he might not do well, so you can't blame us. So it's a cop out one from industry providers. I always hated that. But then if you break it down, GPP versus cash, that implies that all cash games are the same and all GPPs are the same, when it's really not the case. So in the ultimate guide that I wrote, I break down every single type of contest. I think it's 15 different contests. So a 50-50 with 100 people is way different than playing a $100 head-to-head, which is way different than playing a double-up that has 1,000 people where you can have 100 entries of your own. Yet they're all labeled as cash games. So you have to really look at contests individually, not group them all together. And that's something that as Occupy Fantasy we really want to change in the industry. But just to back off my my pedestal here, when deciding which type of contest to play, it really all starts with the lineup. As something I preach in the book and something we preach at Occupy Fantasy is you create your lineup first, and then you enter the contest. So many people, they look to the lobby, say, okay, I'm going to play this 50-50 today, I'm going to play this GPP today, boom, and then later on I'll make my lineup. But really, that's not the way you should do it. You make your lineup first, and then you look at a variety of factors. Look at the ownership for the guys in your lineup. Look at the possible range of outcomes for the guys in your lineup. Look at your overall roster construction, and then all that really determines which types of contests you should play.
Yeah, you just mentioned it, talking about ownership. I wanted to ask, when you look at ownership numbers, is there any kind of keys that you look towards as whether or not someone with high ownership, you want to make sure you own that player so you don't miss out just in case he does go off? Or do you look for guys that are more owned or lowly owned, and they are someone that if they hit, you are one of the few people that have them? Or is that dependent on the type of game that you're joining?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the type of game you're playing. But really, so what I recommend, you do your research first. You read the articles you like, you look at the models you like, you do your own research, however it is. You have your top tier of plays that you have generally. So NFL, you're reading all week, and finally, Friday, Saturday, you see the injuries. Like, all right, these are the top guys at every position that I like. And then what I normally do from that step is I compare those top guys. I see how they would fit into a lineup, and then I look at their projected ownership. And there are different sites that project ownership. You can create your own. You can get a feel for who the high-owned guys are just by reading articles in the industry and seeing who's being recommended the most. So you take a look at that, and then if your top tier plays, if a handful of them that are in your lineup are going to be these highly owned guys, then you're better off playing them in a 50-50 or a head-to-head or a double-up where other people are going to own them. And if they bust, you're not that far off. But it's power in numbers. So if these people are highly owned, especially in NFL where everyone has a week to gather information, they're probably highly owned for a reason. So they're probably a pretty good play. So in these contests where you don't gain much by going against the grain in these double ups and these 50-50s and head-to-heads, then you stick with these high-owned guys. But when you start playing these higher risk contests where you're playing GPPs or these 50 or 100 man contests or multipliers where you earn 5 or 10 times your money, then you start looking at these top tier plays that are lower ownership, or guys who are maybe they're the same price as someone who's highly owned, but you have them rated equally. It makes a lot of sense to go against the grain because you think they have the same upside but lower ownership. Obviously, you're going to gain more if that player goes off. So it really depends on your lineup. And it depends on the types of contests you're playing in.
Brian, I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and they told me, Sal, you always make me laugh when I listen to you. I like the sense of humor you bring, and that's what I do. I like to make. Don't listen to Steve. He knows it's true. The point I'm trying to make here is what I said back to the guy is there are much smarter people in this industry doing better things with analytics and stats, and you're one of them. What you conveyed to us and our listeners tonight was phenomenal. And I look forward to digging all the way into the book. Why don't you tell everybody where they can follow you, how they could get their hands on your guide, and what you got. If you have anything else going on outside of here or outside of Occupy that you want to push, now's the chance to do it.
For sure. So, one, I appreciate you guys having me on. Much appreciated. Great talking with you. First, you can buy the book at occupyfantasy.com. We just launched the website August 1st. So you can check the book out there. Follow us on Twitter at occupyfantasy. We're part of the degenerates that are doing preseason NFL DFS. So we're doing periscopes for every single slate on our Twitter for NFL DFS. And you can follow me on Twitter at Brian Jester FF. I'm shooting all kinds of stats and pictures and whatnot on my personal account. So occupyfantasy.com is where you can buy the book, and pretty much you can get all the information you need from our Twitter at occupyfantasy. That's
awesome, man. Thanks a lot. We definitely appreciate it, and we'll be sure to check this out and push this out for you because it's definitely some good information. Thanks again to Brian Jester, and have a good night, man.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thanks, Brian.
Pal, good night.
All right, thanks again to Brian Jester. That's at Brian Jester FF. If you want to find him on Twitter, we will be pushing out his information over the next few days because it's really good stuff. As Sal mentioned, it takes a lot to get Sal to read, and so the fact that he did that is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm a fan of. I'm not a big fan of words, but
there's a lot of pictures in the intro.
Oh, sweet.
All right, guys. It's been 2 days since we last spoke, and so there's not as much news as last time, but hopefully that'll help this show move along a little quicker. But there's a couple of things that I want to talk to you about. Alex Smith, it seems to be he's changing his style a little bit, getting more aggressive in camp, throwing the ball downfield more. A lot of people are speculating that this is because of Patrick Mahomes, who the Chiefs traded up to draft in the first round. Steve, what is your thoughts on this? Do you think Alex Smith can actually be the type of quarterback that can be a little bit aggressive?
I mean, he can. I think he could if he really wanted to. But I don't know if that's he's a seasoned veteran at this point. He's not the first year in the league. He's not his first couple of years in the league. He's been this guy for quite a while. You think that if he had any reason to do this before, he might have done it. And so that does give you reason to pause. But I absolutely agree. He is worried about Mahomes taking his job, and I think he should be because the Kansas City, they've got a good team. They've got a good coach. They've got good things going for them. They're in a tough division, but they don't want to be wasting this team on somebody that's not going to take chances when they have to, and that is something that I think Mahomes has shown that he will do. He is a risk taker in college, and so I think that Alex Smith is trying to hold on to his job. He's had his job taken from him before when Kaepernick came in and took it in San Francisco, so I think he's worried about it, and I think he should be trying to change it up a little bit because the last few years he has done well enough to get them to the playoffs for them to be competitive. But obviously they have not been able to get over that hump. So I think he should absolutely be trying to change it up a bit.
So don't you think that becomes, the opposite of what he is, which is a guy who, takes care of the offense and doesn't make the mistake. And a guy like himself, when he starts to play more aggressively, is likely going to make more mistakes. And possibly that's going to lead to him being replaced. Now, what I find really interesting is the NFL power rankings came out this week, and the Raiders, the Chiefs, and the Broncos all together are in the top 10, one after another, all three teams from that same division. I find it interesting that the Chiefs would be messing around now with the possibility, and I don't know that the Chiefs have said it, but there's rumblings, and putting Mahomes in there, because as good as he might be, you also run the risk of him being that risk taker and making a ton of mistakes and really just missing a window of opportunity to go deep in the playoffs, maybe win a division again. And I don't think that they're built to win a championship, but anything can happen on any year. So it's surprising to me that they don't just let Mahomes sit back, take this year, become adjusted, and then next year let it become his team.
Yeah, I mean, I think they probably will, right? But you're not going to do that in the preseason. You got to give the kid some kind of thought that he can play. You know what I mean? You're not just going to say, "Oh yeah, it's Alex Smith all the way," and we're not gonna play the kid. And, you know, you can't do that. You got to say if he looks good, maybe we'll play him. Things like that have to go.
But wait a second. Normally, you don't do that with the young kid. You give them basically, you're gonna have to work hard and earn this. Not you make them feel like they don't have that position, so they go out and work harder.
I disagree. Well, yeah, I disagree because I think that you have. How hard are they going to work if they know for a fact they're not getting the job? There's got to be some carrot at the end of the stick. So I mean, you got to give the opportunity there. That hey, if he plays really well and if he's doing the things we're telling him to do, he's got a chance to play. Otherwise, they're just not going to do it.
I just think it all chalks itself up to good stuff for the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think Alex Smith will be the starting quarterback on this team for the majority of the season unless things really go wrong. I don't think they're going to put this kid in, particularly a kid that takes risks like this, because you're talking about, aside from the fact that the Raiders and the Broncos are good teams, I mean, the Broncos will have one of the best defenses in the league, especially with those corners and Von Miller being able to get after the quarterback. You know, Khalil Mack's going to be able to rush the passer. You really don't want to throw a kid out there that you know, and damage his ego, his mentality, whatever you want to call it. If he's not ready.
Machismo, Kevin.
Machismo, sure. If you want to go with machismo, that's a way to talk about it. So I just think Alex Smith is going to be the guy for this year. You know, they're still a contender. If the season goes wrong, you know, it goes sideways, then you might see him. But I like to see the fact that Alex Smith might be changing his style a little bit. I think that they have weapons in this offense that could benefit from that. I'm not a big Tyreek Hill fan, but I think if Alex Smith is going to get a little bit more aggressive, I think that certainly helps him. I think it helps Spencer Ware because if he's throwing the ball downfield a little bit more and taking some more chances, it might open up some additional lanes for him. And I think that, you know, Chris Conley or Albert Wilson or whoever else ends up with these you know, with the Jehu Chesson, I always screw that name up.
Jehu Chesson?
Yeah.
No, that was good, Sal. I like that.
But I mean, any of these guys can benefit from him being more aggressive. So even if he makes a few more mistakes or throws a few extra picks, I think it's a good thing. So, all right, let's continue on here. Thomas Rawls dealing with a minor ankle injury, and the only reason I put this on here, even, you know, they're saying it's minor, it's not a big deal. But Sal, we've heard this before. He obviously had a big injury last year with the ankle, and now he's got minor ankle injury. He's starting to miss some time. We heard great things out of the last few weeks from him. He's ahead of Eddie Lacy, yada yada yada. But this is the history with this guy. He gets hurt. So are you worried about this? You know, that these things are going to start popping up?
Yeah, just last episode, I spoke about how he shot up my rankings, right? He was in my top 30 RBs after the news came out, and he got those lead carries in the first game. Yeah, you got to be concerned with this because the injury history exists and missing time exists, and it's a crowded backfield there. We dug into this last week. What we didn't know at that time and we didn't talk about was the rookie Chris Carson, who has really been flashing in camp. He's not I shouldn't say flashy, I guess, because he's not a flashy running back. He's more of a bulldozer running back. He scored 2 touchdowns in a preseason game last week, and he's been taking some carries with the ones, and it's a very interesting development. So I think that means Chris Carson is a viable fantasy player this year. No, I would definitely look to add him in dynasty leagues. He seems to have passed up Alex Collins, who's the guy that they were high on. It all means to me that this is going to be a sticky situation, and I might start gearing my eyes towards a different backfield and not getting involved in this mess.
I agree. I completely agree there. I don't have anything else to add.
Oh, what a surprise. You agree with Sal. I'm shocked.
Do you disagree?
No, I think it's a mess anyway. I think it was a mess before. I think it was a mess before the ankle injury to Rawls here, even though it's minor. I think it was a mess because you have three running backs who are going to get a share of these carries in Eddie Lacy, Thomas Rawls, and CJ Procise. I think Alex Collins is a guy that's in the mix a little bit, and now Chris Carson as well. Yeah, it's a mess. I didn't want any part of it before, and I certainly don't want any part of it now. So, all right, let's keep moving along here. Josh Doxson, it looks like he's on track to play on Friday. Steve, give me your thoughts on Doxson. Are you ready to buy in? Are you excited to see him play? What's your thoughts?
I'm going to say about time. It's about time we finally get to see this guy play. It's been a year that we've been hearing about him and how good he is, so I would actually like to see him on the field and do it and stay healthy and be able to play in their next game as well. But Kev, you have been a Josh Doxson fan ever since he was drafted last year. I would like to hear your thoughts on this particular player.
Yeah, I mean, I think Doxson coming out of college was one of the guys that I was very excited about for last season. I think that he has a skill set that fits well with what they want to do there. He's a big guy. He's tough receiver. He wins at the point of attack. I think that, the biggest problem with him is we haven't really seen it yet, right? But he's definitely a guy that's been on my radar for, the year plus now that we've been hearing about him, and I am excited to see him on the field. I can't wait to see how they use him. Obviously, this offense is a little bit different now with Terrell Pryor there, and obviously Crowder. Another year into this offense, he's a guy that a lot of people are high on.
Not you. You don't like Crowder.
You don't like Crowder.
Oh Jesus. I just can't even.
It's growing on him.
Nope, it's really not. It's really not. And having both of you do it is even worse. So, listen, I'm excited to see what he can do. I'd really like to see him in some games, and he's still a guy that I've been taking late in a lot of drafts because I think you can get him for good value as a flyer. And so I'm excited to see him play.
I think I'm excited to see him play as well. I want to see what he can do. He's an exciting young player, and he was somebody we all hoped would hit last year, and I've been able to grab him cheaply, maybe in a few dynasties, along with Treadwell. Those are the two guys I'm hoping can maybe hit in year two. And I'm also interested to see how it plays out in that offense. There was actually a report today that Jamison Crowder will likely be the number 2 target behind Jordan Reed, and where does that leave Terrell Pryor, especially if Josh Doxson comes in and starts playing well? So, and we know that Pryor's being drafted really high, so I think there's a lot to be worked out in this offense, and I think a big part of it is what does Doxson do?
Yeah, I think I know a lot of people are really high on Terrell Pryor. I think he is a talented receiver, but I do think he's going to play the Deshaun Jackson role in this, and I don't think Deshaun Jackson has been drafted in the spot that Terrell Pryor is currently going in quite some time. So I'm curious to see how that plays out as well. Let's move along to some news that I know Steve was excited about today. Lev Bell plans to report before week 1. Woo! I'm not sure why you were excited, Steve, but here it is for you.
Yeah. No, I'm not surprised because I think we've talked about it on the podcast before that we thought that he was going to come back. And so just hearing that it's actually going to happen and that he's going to be there for week 1, it's just great. I've got him as my number 1 overall running back, and he has shown that he can be off for long periods of time, and when he comes back, he seems like the same exact player. So all systems go for Le'Veon Bell. Go ahead and draft him 1 overall in all your drafts, no matter what.
All right, and we will move on in the interest of time. Ryan Kelly, the center for the Indianapolis Colts, is going on IR, designated return for foot surgery. The only reason I bring this up, I know you guys love it when I bring up offensive lineman injuries and suspensions, but this is an important one because this is the guy that should be working with Tolson right now because it's getting scary to see, to think about the fact that Andrew Luck may or may not actually make it back for week 1. They need as much help on the offensive line as they can possibly get. This offense is turning nasty very quickly, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I want to give a shout out. I believe it's Adam Spinks, who's the RB scout, who actually posted a graph that showed that most of Gore's successful runs were up the middle where Kelly would be blocking for him, and he got he got a shout out by Matthew Berry today on Twitter. He got mentioned on the NFL Fantasy Live, and now he got mentioned on the Falafel House.
Wow, things are looking up.
It's a banner week.
I think that's really really going to affect the running game there, and it's just, as you mentioned, Kevin, look at this guy and that guy, and where does it end? Is how long before Moncrief gets hurt again? And starting to become a bit of a mess in a place where we thought that an offense would be a high-scoring fantasy juggernaut.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Andrew Luck was having issues being sacked before this injury, and so now whenever he does come back, he's going to have to be an offensive lineman down, and then that just ups his chances of being sacked multiple times and injured again. So I agree, this offense is becoming one that you might want to start to look away from. It sucks. I've got a ton of T.Y. Hilton stock on my best ball teams, and so, yeah, it's just a little worrisome. Hopefully all the issues are able to be remedied. Ryan Kelly should be able to come back after 6 games and be able to play. And you just hope that it's not anything that lasts season long. But to start the season, definitely going to make you pause on draft night.
All right, Kenny Golladay, the hype has gotten all the way to his own team now. Obviously, this is a guy that...
You're telling me that they believe the team is now bought into his fantasy hype?
Yeah, that's it. The team is now all on board because they have him working with the first-team offense now. So it has gone so far that he is now working with the ones. I think it's all based on fantasy. Obviously, the coach there, or Jim Bob Cooter himself, plays on a fantasy team and has drafted Kenny Golladay. There's just no question about that, right?
Or it might have to do with the fact that the kid actually looks like he can play.
Yeah, it does look good.
I know he wasn't going against top defenses rather and big defensive schemes, but he adjusted well for that first touchdown in the end zone, and he pulled in a second one, and we've heard tons of good stuff coming out of camp. It's very, you got to be very careful not to overdraft a guy like this. In the next 2 weeks, it's possible his ADP can just shoot up to a ridiculous level. But if you're in a deep league, I mean, he's going to get drafted in Falafel. It's a 16-team league.
Yep.
He's going to go in that league. That's without a doubt for many different reasons. So he's not a guy in a 10-team league I'd probably have on my roster, a 12-team league, depending on how many rounds and how deep the rosters are. But he's definitely somebody to keep an eye on, and he's very impressive. If you missed out on him in Dynasty like I did, too late, baby, too late.
I would say real quick that he did not practice with the first-team offense today. Today he was not on the first-team offense. Yesterday he was, though. So hype train breaks all of a sudden.
Oh, wow. Oh, all right.
All in that quick.
Here's something, the hype train that you've been on pretty much all offseason, Steve. Ty Montgomery is expected to miss Saturday's game, so you know what that means.
Jamal Williams, baby. Jamal
Williams. This is his chance. This is it right now. We're getting into the preseason where you're going to see a lot more of the ones. Tymo not on the field. You got some Jamal Williams going. What are you expecting?
That's right. We all know 2 years ago in 2015, it was Tevin Coleman that came in and was playing well. He got injured, and who took over is one Devontae Freeman, and he turned into hot garbage. And I'm not saying Jamal Williams is going to be that guy, but I am saying that injury does lead to opportunity for people that are behind the top guys on the depth chart. So he has got to show up in this game if he wants to make a legit shot. Now, when I've been talking about Jamal Williams, I did not think that it would be something that would start the season. I still don't necessarily think that. I know Sal mentioned in the chat today. I still think this is Ty Montgomery's job as long as he's healthy. It would have to be something for him to not perform while he was healthy in that offense for Jamal Williams to get a legit shot to take over as that RB1. But this does not hurt at all. I'm going to be watching this game very intently and hoping that he succeeds and does very well, and just to keep that hype train moving.
I think the biggest news that came out today was that Devontae Mays, the late round running back that they drafted, seems to have passed up Aaron Jones in the depth chart.
Who?
And he was running. Yes, that's right. Aaron Jones.
It's amazing to me how much you hate Aaron Jones.
And Mays is running with the twos today. with Montgomery out, you had Jamal Williams with the ones and Mays with the twos, and Aaron Jones was holding the Gatorade bottles.
I don't hate Aaron Jones.
You do.
I know.
You clearly hate him.
I don't hate him as a person.
I've heard you insult his mother.
No, I don't even know his mother. I'm sure she's a great lady. I'm sure she's
Mrs.
great.
Jones.
Yeah, it's Mrs. Jones. Come on. But for everyone to just assume that he was going to be the guy that took over when it was obviously going to be Jamal Williams taking over, it was just a little bit much.
Obviously. All right, then. Well, listen, let me ask you this, Steve. How many times have you drafted Jamal Williams on the Play Draft app?
I have not counted. I will get back to you with that on
every time that I didn't get him first.
Yeah, it's been quite a bit. I've reached for him in a few drafts, depending on who is in that draft with me. But I've got him. I'm on, I think, 23 or 24 draft teams. I've probably got him on at least 15 or 16. I'll have to count.
He's the
him
guy.
back.
For me, every time I'm looking around, it's getting later in those drafts, and I'm like, all right, I need to add a running back here. I'm like, oh, great, Jamal's here. So he's a guy I've added a lot. I'm in a few drafts, very few, without Steve.
You know, for me, I got to say that one of the guy that I'm adding in that same general area is Alvin Kamara, and the only reason I do that is because it's a half-point PPR league, and I think with the best ball format that Play Draft is now offering, I think you got a better chance of Kamara having a week where he goes, absolutely ham, whereas Jamal Williams might have a slow burn more for me. So I'm Alvin Kamara is a rookie that I'm targeting in best ball drafts at the end. And Play Draft is definitely the place you want to do it. You can go to playdraft.com/falafel, deposit at least $10, and we'll give you a free best ball. You can go to the Play Draft app and use the code, sign up with the code falafel, and they'll give you the deposit $10. They'll give you the same and free entry into a best ball draft. And it's just a great app to use or website to use. It's very user friendly. The interface is very easy to manage, navigate. It's very easy to see the players that queue them up into a queue. Make sure you do that, by the way, because if you don't, you will get Quincy Anunwad.
You've got a Noonwood. You've got a Noonwood and Dixon.
I got a Noonwood and Dixon. Yes, recently in a draft that I was not paying attention to. So make sure you pay attention. It's really easy to do, so you have to be really dumb like me to not make that happen. But anyway, the Play Draft app, Sal, it's really easy to set some queue and make sure you don't get auto-drafted.
Just set it and forget it.
That's right.
If there's no fans of the old Ronco infomercials, but
I used to use that meme all the time on the Fantasy Life app.
Oh, is that right?
Oh yeah.
Excuse me, I must
You
need to
forgot how
stop
old
paying
I am.
attention.
You forgot how old I am.
Internally, you're quite old. Kevin, I love the Play Draft app. I have been a little distracted since you mentioned ham, because I am a little hungry, and so I haven't been able to think much since then. But no, we've all been getting on there. We've been playing anywhere from 3-man drafts to 6-man drafts to 8, 10, 12. Bunch of big industry guys in there, as we've mentioned before, aside from the falafel guys and the Dynasty Happy Hour guys. You can go on there at any time and find a Pat Thorman has run plenty of drafts on there. Josh ADHD,
Mike
a lot
Beers.
of the Roto Grinders guys. That's right, Mike Beers.
That's right.
It's fun. And you've even played with Mike the Hitman from Fantasy Footballers.
That's
so
right.
You'll never know who you're going to find in there, but there's tons of good people drafting in there. It's a lot of fun, and I recommend you just right now pause this, go download the app, come back, turn us on, and draft while listening.
That's a good time. And some of the things that I love about it, you alluded to it there, Sal. The customizability, if that's a word, customization.
Customizableness
of the best balls that you can do. You can add any number of teams in there. You can add you can do an 8-hour draft. You can do a 30-second draft. You can do them. We've done a couple on air over the last couple of months where we've done them in 30 minutes. You're drafting a full team. And unlike other daily fantasies, obviously this is season long. We're talking about the best ball, but in the coming weeks, I know Steve is already getting psyched for those week ones. The weekly tournaments, and unlike those the DFS like we talked about with Brian Jester, Play Draft does a snake draft, so you can actually draft your team. You'll be the only guy to have certain players, which obviously if you know the good players to take, unlike Steve, you will have an advantage.
Wrong. It's wrong. I know
That's
the players
your analysis there, huh?
Yeah.
Good.
I know the players to take. Don't worry about me.
What do you love about the Play Draft app, Steve? Before we move on.
Oh my God.
What's your favorite thing?
What don't I love about the Play Draft app? Actually, is a shorter answer, and I'm not even going to answer it because I love everything. I love everything about it. The quickness and the user interface. That's everything. That's all you need. You can go in there. You can join a draft. It can start minutes later, and then you're done with it a half hour later, and then you can join another one. That's it.
Very streamlined indeed. All right, so let's. You can go to playdraft.com/falafel. That's FLAFFL. In case you somehow don't know what falafel is, or you can go to the app on the iTunes Store, Google Play Store, and sign up and enter the promo code falafel. When you deposit $10, you will get a free entry into a best ball tournament. So definitely check that out. We are going to move along, though, and get into some ranking talks. We talked about it a little bit earlier this week, and we are going to continue on. Steve put together a nice long list of some of the areas where our rankings differ from the current ADP. I assumed you used PPR, and I assumed you used 4for4.com, Steve.
Those are both correct assumptions.
All right, that's good. So what I'm going to do here, you put together a nice long list. I'm going to pick out a few that I want to talk about, and we're going to go through them. So the first one up here, we're going to start with some quarterbacks. I'm gonna ask Sal because it seems like it might be a little bit of homerism here, but he's got Derek Carr as the QB7, ADP is QB12, so not that far off. But what's going on with your love of Derek Carr, Sal?
All right, so first question, who put this on the list?
That was me.
Steve,
where do you have Derek Carr ranked?
I've got him ranked at 6.
Oh, so how the hell am I getting questioned and him being at 7? How are you questioning me and him being ranked 7 when you have him ranked higher than me?
Listen, all right? Listen, Linda.
Excellent question.
Listen.
I'm listening.
I had to find somebody that you were considerably higher on than the ADP. And he was one of the biggest disparities that you had. Eat it.
Because I'm pretty much on the money with everybody else is what you're saying. I get it. Hey, listen.
It's like you almost copied your rankings from the ADPs.
What time is it? I gotta go. They're coming to take me away. So
come on. You really have to sing that creepy song?
I could sing more.
I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight thinking about that damn song now.
It's a funny farm. Life is fun.
Man. All right, let's talk about Derek Carr a little bit.
I'm sure there's a
You know what, Sal? I'm cutting you off. Steve, why are you so high on Derek Carr? Sal at least has homerism.
No, I was kind of just banking off of Sal selling me on it. I saw his ranking of it and thought I should one-up him a little bit.
So forget me copying the ADP. You just copied me copying the ADP.
No,
listen. That offense is due to progress. They've got a lot of weapons. They've got 2 running backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield outside of Marshawn Lynch. They got Amari Cooper, who the fantasy industry, by large, not everybody thinks that he's going to have his breakout year this year, and Crabtree, who's just been extremely reliable. So he got hurt last year. I realize he played 14 and a half games, but I think he's going to make the leap up into 30 plus touchdowns this year. And if they play their cards right, he could become a 4,500 to 5,000 yard passer. Probably not quite 5,000, but yeah, I think that the offense on a whole is progressing.
And my biggest thing is that their defense has not been great, and they didn't do a ton to improve that last year. And so they do have the great offense. They do have the great running game, but their defense, I don't think, is one that is going to be shutting offenses down to the point where that offense won't have to necessarily keep up to win their games. So I think that he's going to have a lot of opportunity, and I think that with a full season and Amari Cooper getting a few more touchdowns, I know we've talked about that a lot on the podcast, I think that he's just going to have a good year, along with a slight regression from some of the other quarterbacks that were ahead of him last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to have a good year for sure. I have him at QB 13. I could probably be convinced to move him into the top 12, but that's about as far as I'm going to go. I don't know how he gets much higher up there. I have some other quarterbacks that I'm expecting bigger years out of. I think you're right, Steve. They didn't really do too much to improve the Defense, I don't know how much better the offense has gotten either. Obviously, there's Marshawn Lynch, who replaces Latavius Murray. Sal thinks he's going to be better, but I don't know that he really is. So, I just I think that Carr is going to have a good season similar to last year, and I expect him to finish somewhere in that QB 13 range. So
hey, I was just going to cut you right off, and I'm going to screw up your entire agenda and all this stuff. But while we're on it, and you brought up Marshawn Lynch, I see on the list that you have Marshawn Lynch as your RB30 and his ADP is at RB13. Explain to us why you're so low on him. So if you don't believe in him, you don't even have him as an RB2 at this point. So explain yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think for one, I never predict injuries. I just don't think that this is the type of guy that's going to hold up throughout a whole season, getting a workload similar to what Latavius Murray had. And I'll have to pull it up to see what Latavius Murray actually had for carries. But I don't think that they're going to try to use Marshawn Lynch as much as everyone seems to think they're going to. I get the touchdown upside. I get that he could have 10 touchdowns. And that's all fine, but I think they're going to use the rookies. They have two good second-year players right now that they like, and in Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington that I think are going to get a lot of run. Sal, you yourself have talked many, many times about the other rookie. His name is escaping me right now. That you were pretty high on coming into the season. So Elijah Hood, that's correct. And so in 14 games last year, Latavius Murray got 195 carries. I think if Marshawn Lynch gets anywhere near that, I will be impressed. So you're talking about expecting the touchdowns, which we all think he might have a good touchdown season. Murray had 12 last year, but I don't know that you can bank on him getting 12 touchdowns, and I don't know. I just don't see it.
Kev, let's play over under, and 195 carries for Marshawn Lynch. I'll take over.
Ooh,
I will take the under for sure.
Okay,
I'll take the over.
What are we betting?
Oh,
do I get to bitch slap you live on the air?
You want to do a slap bet?
I'll take a bitch slapping.
Let's get whoever
wins. Whoever wins gets to slap Steve.
No,
I was going to say stay away from my wife.
That is terrible.
That's a good bet.
Let's get a shirt made with my face on it, and the loser has to wear it and use it as their Twitter avatar.
Oh my God, that's great. I love it.
All right.
I'm not sure anybody's willing to print that up, but
what's the other T-shirt bet that we have? There's another bet out there.
The other T-shirt bet we had, I believe, was Coleman and Freeman.
Oh, that's right. You Coleman, correct?
But I'd like to get out of that bet.
Man, we really got to write these down. I'm writing this one down right now.
Writing these down. Yeah. All right. So, but while you're writing that down, so I think I've explained myself on Marshawn Lynch. Let's continue on with a couple more running backs here. I'm going to go with Isaiah Crowell. No, we're not going to go with him. Steve, we're going to talk about Carlos Hyde. You have him at running back 12.
Yeah.
His ADP is currently running back 16. I'm a big running Carlos Hyde fan as well, but you seem to be awfully high on him.
I am actually only slightly higher on him than you are. You've got him at running back 13. So we are both right in the same neighborhood. I just feel that he has gotten a bad rap the last couple of years, mostly due to his inadequacy and unavailability to be.
Are we still talking about the football field?
I believe so. I mean, I don't know anything else. If you have some insider information that you'd like to share. No?
Viagra is a big sponsor. Cialis.
No. I think that he is a guy that has gotten a lot of praise this training camp after the initial reports that he might be cut or traded. He's looked good. As long as he can stay healthy, we have seen what a Kyle Shanahan lead running back can do in that offense. And so he has done well on terrible teams in the past, the last 2 years. And as long as he is able to stay healthy, the team still might be terrible, but the offense might be set up in a way where he is still able to have fantasy-relevant numbers. Big scares are obviously his availability. He might get injured again like he has done in the last 2 years, and the team might be such trash that they have to abandon the run later on, limiting his upside and opportunity. I'm willing to take the risk on those bets. I think that he is going to be a very, very league-winning type running back, honestly, because of where he's being drafted. You're going to be able to find him in a 10-team league in the 5th round, late 4th round of a 12-team league. And if he's the 4th piece to your team and he does anything that a lot of people think that he might do, I think that he's going to be a huge asset to your fantasy team. So I don't mind the risk is low. I think it's all upside with him.
Hey, you have him 12. Kevin has him 13. Does anybody know where I have him?
Actually, I have him at 19. You have him at 13.
That's what I say. I have him at 13.
Oh,
so Steve,
that's right.
Steve screwed up, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah,
I did.
He did.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I have him at 13. You and me, buddy.
That's right.
Just
I knew
the
something
two
felt
of
right
us.
about that. I don't know, Kev. You just said you're a Carlos Hyde guy and you got him at 19. What's up with that?
I mean, it's a running back too. I still think he's a pretty good running back. I
Yeah,
just,
like
I don't think
mid
he's
to low end running back too. It's not like a high end running back too.
all right. I apologize. I'll adjust it tomorrow.
Man, apologize. I think we should move on.
Let's just move on. So we'll get into a couple of wide receivers. I'm going to start off with myself here and Michael Thomas because apparently I have him much lower than the rest of the world. I have him at wide receiver 19. ADP is currently at wide receiver 7. Sally, you are much closer to the ADP at wide receiver 8, and Steve, you have him at wide receiver 10. So I am further down on him. Look, I think that he is a great talent. I think that he had a great rookie season. I don't, a lot of people, you might point to the Brandon Cooks trade in any way, in different ways, right? Some people will say that it benefits him because, he's more of a focal point. I personally think that it hurts him because, he's more of a focal point. He's going to get the number 1 corner every week. He's going to get he's going to have extra coverage over the top because he's not going to have, a guy like Brandon Cooks, as talented as he is, taking the top off. Obviously, they brought in Ted Ginn, who was still pretty fast and able to do that, but not quite at the level of Brandon Cooks. I think we can all agree on that. And I just don't think that – I think as the number 1 this year, with more focus on him, a full year of film for other teams to plan, I think I can see a little bit of regression for him. And as I'm looking through, the guys that I have ahead of him, there's some guys that I could probably move down a little bit, but I see I have I'm pretty high on Golden Tate, and obviously Cameron Meredith is a guy that we've talked about a couple of times recently that I could be moving down. But the rest of the guys in this group, I really don't see him outperforming. Allen Robinson is another guy that after watching the game tonight, maybe that I need to knock him down again. I was hearing good things out of camp. I was expecting good things out of him. So maybe he's another guy that I can knock down. So at most, maybe I'm getting him into the, wide receiver 16, 15 range, but that's about it. So why are you guys so high on him, and why do you think everyone else is?
For the exact opposite reasons of everything you just explained. Just figured it was easier that way.
And time sensitive.
Hashtag analysis. All right, so let's continue on then. Sal, I want to ask you about Larry Fitzgerald because you love Larry Fitzgerald more than everyone.
So this is my full PPR rankings. I believe you're pulling this from. So he did lead the league in receptions last year. After all these years of being there, he's consistent. He's a Hall of Famer, and I just think he's going to come out and ball out in this year. As I've mentioned before, I think that the Cardinals have a chance to return to the Super Bowl this year, and I'll get there for the first time in a while, but with Carson Palmer and not what the hell was his name? Kurt Warner. So I think that they are going to be in for a big year, especially since their defense is healthy. The biggest thing that scared me there now, what should be scaring you, Kevin, and makes Larry Fitzgerald more of a focal point is
I don't want to talk about it.
John Brown was said today by Bruce Arians that at some point you might have to move on and replace the guy. He might not even be on a roster when we break camp this year. His health issues are becoming something that they do not want to deal with anymore, and they might be moving on from him. So Larry Fitzgerald is going to remain the clear number 1 wide receiver, the clear number 1 target. I get it. They want to get David Johnson 1,000 receiving yards, but it's the two of them. I mean, they have Gresham, who's a good NFL tight end, but not a stud by any stretch. They got Jerron Brown, who's healthier than we realized the other day, and he appears to be the number 2. J.J. Nelson, but these are all bit player guys. So for me, Larry Fitzgerald is in for a big season.
All right. I appreciate the explanation. I think Larry Fitzgerald is a great player as well. I think I have him at 18. So I'm with you on that. I just not quite to that level because I think the offense may struggle, and I'm really starting to get nervous about John Brown as well. In the interest of time, we're going to move along to a tight end here, and there's only one that I think we've talked about several times that we need to address again. Interestingly enough, Steve put this on the list under Sal.
Yeah.
Because Sal has him as tight end 9. ADP is tight end 12. And yet, strangely, Steve has him as tight end 16.
That's right. That is correct.
So this is interesting for one, because I believe he was tight end like 30 for you a couple of weeks ago. So let's talk about Eric Ebron, and I actually want to hear from Steve instead of Sal.
Yeah.
What say you over the big change?
Like I said, when he was ranked at 24, I realized that was probably a little low, and so he has since been moved up to about tight end 16 for me, but things just really haven't changed much for me. I understand that he is a good talent. He has great measurables. He's big. He's fast. He can catch the ball sometimes. But that's just not enough for me in that offense. I think that offense would like to have more symmetry on how much they pass and run the ball. I think they want it to be more equal than them passing or having to pass. I think they've got multiple targets on that offense with Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, Theo Riddick. Amir Abdullah can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. He is healthy. And then they've also got one, Kenny Golladay, who we've already talked about on this podcast, is just another guy, a big guy, that could potentially fill an Anquan Bolden type slot role and take red zone targets away from Eric Ebron. And on top of that, he is already dealing with a hamstring issue, a soft tissue issue, if you will.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
And that is not helping at all. He's had injuries in the past that have kept him off the field, that has led to this, 3 seasons in a row now where he's been talked about as a potential breakout tight end. I'm just not buying it yet. I am going to wait till I see it for a consistent season before I buy in. And until then, I am not drafting him as my tight end 1. I'm just not doing it. Not doing it.
He's a low end tight end 1 for me. I probably have to switch him and Kyle Rudolph. Rudolph should probably be my 9 and Ebron my 10, which would bring him a little bit closer to the ADP. And another guy who will be moving up my ranking is Jack Doyle. Swoop is now, nicked up a little bit, so Doyle will move up. But, I'm buying in on that talent. I'm buying in on what I'm hearing, and I think Ebron is going to be a vital part of that offense. I don't think that Golladay takes enough of his touchdown possibility away. And, maybe I have to move Michael Roberts up a little bit too.
He apparently
Obviously,
is one of the only healthy tight ends on that team right now.
I own him on every dynasty roster I have.
Of course you do. All right, that was it. That's all we have time for as far as the rankings. We will continue to do this throughout the offseason. We'll go through our rankings as we continue to change and update them. You can check them out at falafelhouse.com. And won't get too much into that because Steve's going to get to his final thought right now.
That is absolutely correct. You can check us out on Twitter at falafelhouse.com. And if you'd like to dive deep into our rankings, you can do that at falafelhouse.com. You can also find the off-season fantasy content that we're putting out there. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Falafel House. And also, you can join our contest on the Sunday Swim app or at sundayswim.com. Just go there, sign up. They will send you a confirmation email. You will accept that email, and then you will go join the public league at Falafel House. The winner of that league is going to win $50 from us. You are already guaranteed to come in 99th place at least because Kevin is in that league. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. Go ahead and do that. Search for Falafel everywhere on the internet and just like and download and subscribe to everything you find.
All right. I would like to thank Brian Jester again of Occupy Fantasy for coming on and discussing the ultimate guide to becoming a profitable daily fantasy sports player. It rolls off the tongue, Kevin. I don't know what your problem is. He joined us tonight. Check him out. Go purchase the guide. And become a better DFS player this year. I know I will. And, that's it, Kev. That's it.
All right. I would like to remind everyone to go to fantasycares.net. It's a great place to donate some money for charity and get into some fantastic best ball tournaments. I'd also like to ask people to review us. I think it'd be great if we got a few reviews on iTunes or, wherever you get your podcasts. Really helps us out to know what you guys think. and it just helps us out in general to have reviews. So if you could go there and review us, that would be great. We would appreciate it. And also just want to remind everyone that we are part of the Dynasty Happy Hour Network. So go over to dynastyhappyhour.com/podcast and check out all the other great podcasts in that network. I think that's it. That's all we have time for. And we will be back Tuesday night, which will be Wednesday for most of you. And until that time, Steve, hit the button.